In this lecture, I want to begin talking about the fundamentals of Excel. If you're brand new to Excel, then this lecture is for you. Now we're going to begin by talking about data. A spreadsheet is a series of cells, right? It's just a big table, and each cell in the table can hold either data or a formula. Some formula like sum this column, give me an average of these. You have all kinds of formulas to do things in Excel. And that's where the real power of Excel is. But in this lecture, we're going to look at data, and we're going to look at a data-driven table example. So let's jump over to Excel, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here I am in Excel, and I've got a table, a spreadsheet that I've created to track my blood pressure. My blood pressure has been going a little wonky. It's been going all over the place. So I thought I'd start tracking it to see what's going on. Now, this is a pure data-driven application of a spreadsheet. There are no calculations in here. I'm not doing sums or averages or other things that I can do with formulas. So this is going to be all data. In the first column is the date on which the recording is done, and the second column is the time in which the recording is done. And this is a 24-hour clock. And then we have the diastolic and the systolic pressure that I recorded at that time. So I put on my cuff, I do a recording, and then I note this recording for the day. And I now have a nice series of what's been going on with my blood pressure. Now I'm going to duplicate this table. I'm going to recreate it manually to show you how to set up a data-driven table like this. Now there's two things that I can do. I can come up to File, and I can say, give me a new blank spreadsheet. I just double-click on this blank spreadsheet, and here I have a new spreadsheet to work with. That's kind of unsophisticated considering what we can do instead. Let's click on the X in the upper right-hand corner of the spreadsheet to kill it. Instead, notice at the bottom there are tabs on this spreadsheet and a plus sign. What I can do is I can create a new spreadsheet in this workbook. A workbook can have multiple spreadsheets, and I can duplicate this table that way. So let's go ahead and I'll say, give me a new tab. And see, it created sheet 3. Now I can right click on this and I can rename the tab. If I want to say, this is a class example, and then press return. Now I've got a brand new spreadsheet to work on. Now we needed columns for date, time, systolic or diastolic and systolic pressure. So first of all, let's put a date in here and see what happens. So I'm going to put today's date, which is 12/20/2023, and then I'll press return. Notice it expanded the size of the column, but for a brief period of time, it showed pound signs. It shows pound signs when your column is too narrow to include the data that you're including. Now, I'd like all of these columns to be the same width, and I'd like them to be a little wider. If I go to a column, let's pick a column by clicking either A, B, C. Columns are numbered A through triple Z, whatever. And then I right-click on the head. Notice I get Format Cells here, and I also get column width. Let's do column width first. I'm going to say column width here, and notice that it's 8.43 inches wide. Okay, that's the default, so it's a little narrow, but I want to change all the columns. So here I can select a column at a time and right-click and change its column width. But what if I want them all? Well, I can click on a column and then I can hold Shift and I can click the end of a range of columns and get a range of columns that way. I can click a column and hold Control and add individual columns. Or I can click this area. That's what I want. In the upper left-hand corner, this selects all cells, all columns, all rows. Now I can right-click anywhere on any of these columns and say column width, then I'll be setting the column width for all columns, not just a single column. So let's set it to 12. There, that gives me a little more room. And when I click anywhere, everything becomes unselected. Now, we want to put in a time. Let's put in a time of 0. Let's put in the current time. It's 11:54. And I press return. And it went in just fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to set the types for these columns. These are just kind of generic column types. And let's put in a recording first. I'm 70 over 120. Let's give myself a perfect blood pressure right now. Now what I do is I come to this column and I click on it, and then I right-click in the header because I'm going to format every cell in this column. I go Format Cells, and check this out. I can set the type of the cell. So this first type is a date. And I can even pick the kind of format that I want for the date. Now, let's scroll down. Let me see, what am I happy with? I'm happy with the current format, actually. So let's go OK. Now I go to the next column. I right-click and I go Format Cells. This is time. So let's make it time like that. I want it to be this kind of clock. So there we go. And then these two, and I'm going to click and hold the left mouse key and drag over these two columns to get them both. I'm going to format cells to be numbers, simple numbers, and I can say how many decimal places it has. I want this to have 0 decimal places. And now we don't need the thousand separator. And there we go. Now let's put some headers on this. What is this? This is the date. So let's say a date. This is time. This is diastolic. And this is systolic. I think that's how you spell them. And we would like to make that date separate out a little bit. So let's select, once again, I'm going to click on date and I'm going to drag through columns A, B, and C. I only want this row and I only want these cells. So I just selected them. Now I can go to home and I can say the fill color, let's make that black. The font color, let's make that white. There we go. And make the header menu ribbon go away. By the way, I can make the menu ribbon, I've got it collapsed. I can click on this little down arrow over here and I can say always show the ribbon and it will always be there. You might be a little more comfortable with that. So why don't you display your ribbon by doing that? Click on your little clicker here and make sure it's saying always show ribbon. And there, now we have a header. But look, this is interesting. When I scroll, my header goes away. One of the things that I would like is it's under View. You come to the View menu, to the Window section of the ribbon, click the little down arrow and say Freeze Top Row. Now what that'll do is it'll freeze your data headers so that you can scroll and your column titles will stay there. Now, if I want to enter a new entry, let's say I don't need to replicate the date because I'm doing, let's do 0:14. Remember, we're on a 24-hour clock, 12. And here I scored it again. I got a 70 over 120. And I just continue to record data. Now, this is a simple data table-driven example. With any of these cells, I can click, usually you want to do this for a column. I can click on the column, right-click on the column header, and do Format Cells, and put in all of these different types of cell types, scientific notation, fractions, percentages, times, Currency is a good one. Just a basic number. So go ahead and format your cells for your data and create your data-driven table. What is it that you want to track? Maybe over time. So maybe you'll do another date and time recording of some other statistics that you want to keep track of. And in the next lecture, we're going to start looking at formulas, particularly sum and average, which we can apply to this table to start doing some calculations. I'll see you in that lecture.